Okay, so at this point in your math careers, maybe some of you guys have seen variables before. Today we're going to be just answering the question, well, what exactly is a variable? So if you don't know what one is, that's fine. You will learn right now. So sometimes you guys will see things like you'll have an X, and it's like, uh-oh, like what? What is this X? Why are there letters now in math? I thought that math was just numbers. This X right here is just a variable. Okay, and we will learn what a variable is now. So a variable is just a symbol that is used in order to represent a number or numbers. And we'll see a couple of different variables and variable expressions. A variable expression is just like any other numerical expression, except now it has a variable in it. So that for x, right, this x represents some sort of number or numbers. This here is a variable expression. So, for example, we can write a variable expression for this. If we have, it costs $10 per hour to rent a surfboard. Well, let's just figure out how much is it going to cost us if we're renting a surfboard. So if I'm renting a surfboard for 1 hour, what's going to be my cost? Well, I'm just going to do 1, and so 1 times 10 is just going to give me $10, right? My cost is $10. For 2, well, now I'm renting the surfboard for 2 hours, so it's going to cost me 2 times the $10, which is 20. And for 3, we would just do 3 times 10, which gives me $30. Well, what if I just said, what about for just some number h? Okay, for some number h, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's 5, 6, 7. How could I figure out how much it's going to cost me to rent the surfboard? Well, the cost is just going to be h times 10. Right? It's just going to be h times 10. If I rent this surfboard for h hours, well, here I did 1 times 10, then I did 2 times 10, 3 times 10. So here I'm doing h times 10. So my cost is going to be h times 10. We'll see this written in different ways. We could write this as 10 times h. Those are the exact same thing. We don't like to write it as 10 times h using an x, though. We don't like to do this because oftentimes x is used as a variable. Okay, so we don't want to get confused between x the variable and x as a multiplication sign. So we either write it using a dot, or we can just write it right next to each other. We could say 10h. Okay, because that's a variable, we can do that. 10h is the same as 10 times h. So all of these, h times 10, 10 times h, 10h, those are all the same. These are all equivalent expressions, right? Each of these are equivalent variable expressions. Okay, so let's move on to an example here. A tree grows 5 feet every year after being planted. So let's write an expression to represent the situation, or to represent the height of a tree. Well, it grows 5 feet after every year. So that's just going to be 5 feet times the number of years. So we are just going to use y. And I'll say that y is our number of years. Number of years since it was planted, right? If y is the number of years since it was planted, then its height will be just 5 times that number y. Right? It's a lot easier to just write 5 times y than it is to write 5 times the number of years since it was planted. So how tall is the tree in 3 years? Well, this is when y is equal to 3, so we'll just do 5 times 3, and we get 15. Remember, whenever we have these word problems, it's very important for us to consider the context of the problem. We don't want to just write 15, right? Does that really make any sense? No, that's just some number not interpreted in the context. So we want to make sure that we write it as 15 feet. You could even say 15 feet tall. You could write it as a sentence and say the tree will be 15 feet tall after 5 years. And then how tall is the tree in 10 years? Well, that's just when y is equal to 10, so it'll be 5 times, that's a 10, which gives me 50 feet tall. All right, so we are just using the variable y to represent some number, and that number is just the number of years since this tree was planted. All right,